Open General Purposes Committee meeting to order. On the agenda, there is the motion that is proposed by Councillor Heed, notice of which was circulated by email over the weekend. Because there hasn't been the adequate notice for that motion, I'm calling for a notice of motion. We'll put it off for till the next General Purposes Committee meeting, which is on October 16th. So with that, a motion on the minutes. So that's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. And then the Richmond Food Hub Implementation Plan. Katie Ferland, anything to add to your report? Just a minute, hold on a sec. Okay, say that again.
Your Worship, we have nothing to add. Jill Shirey, the report author, and myself are available to answer any questions.
Okay, all right, we've got some questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Thank you for the report. Really excited about seeing the Food Hub implementation plan coming in. I understand that we're getting $1 million from the provincial government out of the $200 million that they've allocated to this, and that 75% of that funding will go to phase 3, which is actual construction and development. Given that we've kind of looked at this before, is there a way to put a little bit more than 75% towards construction and development? And I understand it will complete in 2026. Is there a chance of getting more money out of the $200 million?
Through the chair to Councillor Day. So there are certainly opportunities to apply for additional grants and other funding sources, also through partnerships, to increase the amount that we have available for construction, development, whatever that entity may look like in the future. We do think it's important to allocate funding for the gap analysis and the needs assessment, which would be the first phase, because we have such a strong ecosystem in agri-food and seafood in Richmond, and a lot of great work already underway. So we want to make sure we know what's already being done so that we don't duplicate, and we're really filling in gaps and we're strategic with the funding that we do have.
That's good to hear. I mean, we did do quite a bit of work, so if any time that we're overlapping, that could potentially move the project along, as we know there's an incredible need for it. So thank you very much.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. Actually, an outstanding report. And I echo those same comments that we've just heard. But given we're an agricultural committee, we should be having a food hub. And we should be doing this. This is something I know it's something we tend to be doing on our own to get to the stage, but now with some help in terms of a grant. I guess my question is, and I believe we are going to be successful, so I'm in the line of food security and preparing for food security. What are we going to do with the hub, and who are we going to have implemented, and how is it going to go? I know on GP11, you talk about food processing and storage, etc. Do we know what the needs are out there right now in the agriculture community that could benefit from this grant?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, that's exactly the intention of that first phase, the gap analysis and needs assessment, to really look at a deeper understanding of those needs and what would be helpful to further strengthen the community. So,
and then who are we going to consult? Are we going to consult the active farmers now, or that are what I call the real dirt farmers or whatever? Today, for example, everybody's harvesting cranberries out there right now. This very moment. So I guess as who are the principals that we're looking at that would put this together with our staff?
through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we expect that there'll be a wide range of folks to be consulted through the engagement process. So certainly as we look ahead to advancing that phase one, the feasibility and gap analysis, we'll be developing that stakeholder list further, and we'll provide those updates to council before we embark on that journey.
So we're basically, you're saying our food security people, our Terra Nova, Sharing Farm, et cetera, will all be involved as well.
We certainly started that list and they're on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Really interesting report. I do have a question, just a couple comments first. I think the Premier had a report out about 4 years ago on sustainability and increasing our agricultural production locally. So I think a lot of the comments that were made, I totally agree with. This will be very good. I think Richmond has the potential to be a real agricultural superstar and hub. And I think one of the things that we're missing are some of the things we had before, in a manner of speaking, which is where we produced and processed and then distributed food for sale locally. And so I was just in a store in Vancouver that we actually at the business luncheon had somebody talking about similar things. But this store in Vancouver had locally produced food and products delivered and picked up and a variety of things. And it was a fantastic store located at 33rd Mackenzie. But my question is, we're obviously all in favor of it. I'm just curious, I mean, I don't know where they were getting their products. So is there a model that exists right now that another city or jurisdiction is doing and has implemented? It's kind of like Back to the Future in a way, right? Because we used to do it all locally. And this is a great way to improve sustainability, shorten our supply chains, and make ourselves more resilient, I think, when it comes to food production. So I really did like it. And I like the plan you've laid out. Very thorough, makes sense. Anyway, just on the model, is there anybody that does it well right now?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, so there's Richmond, when this food hub is established, will be the 14th in the provincial network of food hubs. So there are a number of different models out there, and many of those are unique to meeting the needs of the local community in which they're placed. So certainly through this development process, we'll look to develop a model that sort of uses global best practices, but also develops what will serve Richmond. So we'll be looking to learn more about that in terms of opportunities to connect our local producers and our local fishers with our great processing network and our great culinary delights of our restaurants and others that do retail and distribution in the city. There are a number of great elements of that ecosystem already here, and there's certainly an opportunity for this food hub to connect those more. We'll be interested to understand better what some of those gaps and opportunities are through that phase one. But certainly we would think that by encouraging local entrepreneurs to be part of that commercially focused hub, that we may indeed be able to connect some of those suppliers and producers and eaters locally.
That's great. And the last comment was, it was great to see that in the end, it'll be self-sustaining as well, is the goal. So it'll be a success in itself. So thank you very much.
Councillor Au?
Yes, my question is more or less along the same line. Can you expand on, what do you envision will happen at the end of the project? I mean, after the phase one, phase two, what is the end product? Because food hub, as you mentioned in the report, can mean different things to different people. So what I got from this report is that you're talking more about the economic aspect, production and distribution and the economic activities involved. But food hub can mean something else, for people who are in the social service arena, saying, okay, this is to make sure that people who need food would get food, right? So can you just expand further, okay, what can we imagine, what will happen at the end?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, so certainly a food hub can mean different things to different people, and we understand that there are also initiatives underway that may develop different components for different parts of the community for different reasons. In the BC Food Hub Network, those are all hubs with a commercial focus. So that is the intention of the provincial funding, and that is sort of part of the direction of this initiative. That doesn't mean that other food hubs can't develop or other food initiatives can't develop to serve other needs. But part of the intention of the food hub in terms of what it would achieve in its future state is certainly around growth and innovation, which are the key components, key goals of the provincial network. And it will also provide a spectrum of opportunities to those in Richmond in terms of entrepreneurship, supporting our innovation ecosystem, and then of course there's trickle-down benefits in terms of the jobs and also supporting local food systems in a variety of different ways. So the intention, yes, is around the economic component, but through the needs assessment and feasibility study, we'll be talking to stakeholders and other partners that are working across the spectrum of food security, because that is also something that's important in this initiative as well.
If I may quickly add through the chair to Councillor Au, in addition to what Ms. Shirey said, Through the work in phase one, we will start to get a better sense of what it will look like in the end. That work and recommendations for the future phases will come back to council for direction on next steps.
Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion? Second.
Question.
Oh, yeah, Councilor Wolf, you've got a question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief here. Just to review to staff, the first question I have is in regards to will the gap analysis and needs assessment, will it identify populations that are vulnerable or in greater need? I've spoken to some neighboring municipalities and people, and it's the disabled, people living with a disability, that have the biggest challenge at getting food. And another component to this question is, will the Food Hub also provide agencies, groups that will do the distribution of food? Because many people who need it, because of that barrier of being able to go and carry it back, sure, there's great people out there, and they might have friends or individuals in the community who would do that. But could we try and get early on with our Food Hub a distribution component to it? And then I have one more question after that.
Through your worship, to Councillor Wolf. So first, your first question in terms of our work with community partners, we understand that there are a number of different agencies and other organizations across Richmond that focus on that particular component. It may be helpful here to distinguish that this is a commercially focused initiative, so that it wouldn't preclude or duplicate in any way the good work that our community partners are doing in terms of helping the most vulnerable with their most immediate food security needs. In terms of the distribution component, so through that phase one, through the needs assessment and gap analysis process, we expect to identify whether distribution, storage, and some of these other functions, resources, services that are in some food hubs, in what way or to what extent those are also needs in Richmond, or if they're already being met in other ways, and then to work to design and bring back to council a model that addresses those issues accordingly.
Great, thanks. I don't really have a further question then at this point, just that, yeah, as this is going to be a kind of a made in Richmond model, and it'll kind of address the kind of clientele, the culturally appropriate needs of our community makeup. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you to staff. Now we'll go to the community wayfinding strategy guiding principles. Anything to add to your report?
Your worship, we have nothing to add, and again are available to respond to questions.
Yeah, we got a letter recently about Highway to Heaven with various ideas in that. I take it that that's one area that we could have maybe street signs or something like that that would assist with what you're talking about here, the wayfinding? Yes, no?
So, your worship, we are aware of that letter and have responded and engaged with the group so that we can tell them more about the project and hear more about their initiative. As part of the draft strategy that we'll be bringing back to council later in the winter, into early next year, we'll look to identify potential pilot projects in the short term and the implementation of this strategy. So there'll be a number of considerations on the table for council to make decisions on those, and then there'll be further costed and greater detail provided at the implementation stage, which would follow the approval of a final strategy.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I see that the hotel organizations are giving us $25,000 and tourism $25,000. Do we know the total cost of this?
Through your worship, to Councillor Day, so in terms of the total cost of the consulting to develop the strategy, that's anticipated around $240K.
That's just for consulting.
To develop the strategy itself in order to look at the short, medium, and long-term implementation of wayfinding in the city.
Okay, that leads me to my next question then. Didn't we collect a lot of information during the 2010 Olympics? Because I remember there were signs everywhere that pointed in every direction, 1.2 kilometers, a half a kilometer. Wouldn't that have helped us along with this?
Through your worship, to Councillor Day, so we have a number of signage systems in the city that have been developed over time. This strategy is the first citywide strategy that really looks to unify the city, the experience of the city for both our residents and our visitors, and also to bring out those unique elements of different neighborhoods and communities. So it builds on past work and looks to unify and make sure that our investments going forward are as efficient and effective for the community as possible.
Okay, and then I do also want to mirror what Mayor Bodie said, that we did get that letter from the Highway to Heaven, and what could we be more proud of than that area? I mean, where in the world do you see that kind of unity? Churches and synagogues and temples and mosques all working in Livingston, working together. I would like to see this come along a little quicker, because I think it's a great idea, but I also wanted to ask one last question. Will there be like the kilometer information like there was with during the Olympics, so you know that's this far away or that far away, if it's too far for some people and close enough for others?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, so we're working with the consultants on what their best advice is on that, whether it's a number of kilometers or it's amount of minutes, to encourage active transportation wherever we can as well. Sometimes people are more inclined to walk if they know it's a shorter amount of time that it may take them.
I think I'd go kilometers. Everyone walks at a different pace. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, thanks again for another good report. I think that this is a really excellent example of how the MRDT can be used with our stakeholders, including the Hotel Association and Tourism Richmond and the city. So I think that's excellent. The public consultation was interesting, looking at the graphs, noticing that unlike myself, who might be unfolding a paper map, a huge percentage like a more modern electronic version of some kind, like an app. So that's clearly the way we're going to be going. And it leads me to one question I have. Other than that too, I like in the report how it outlines how signs don't have to be all identical. For instance, if you're in a natural area with trails and parks, it can be one kind of style but still fit within the whole plan. If you're in a historic area, it can fit in with that area. And if you're in the central business district, clearly they might be a little bit different. So I think that's obviously a really good way to approach it. Just one question on it is on page 24, I think it's number 4, when you're talking about the technology aspect to it and the digital aspect, the way that we will be going, because that is the way it's going. Can you, there's a couple examples in there, like digital maps and apps and everything, but is there one, what I'm wondering about is, QR codes and that kind of thing. Would they be on the signs where people can zoom in and then go to a site that gives them a lot of information either about that site or directions to and from? Is that what we're talking about?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, so the integration of physical and digital tools is certainly something that the consultants are looking at, and you'll certainly see more of that when we're at the draft strategy stage in terms of both the strategic recommendations of the strategy and also the design elements. So you start to see a family of signage and other elements at that stage, which will be more specific. In terms of your specific question around QR codes, I think there are a number of considerations when we start to look at the specifics of digital implementation that the city will want to consider in terms of sort of keeping up the information and costing and all of that sort of thing, so we don't have people scanning their phone and getting a broken link, so that there's an integrated experience for all users across the city. But the specifics of those elements and pros and cons considerations for council in deciding on those will be presented later in the draft strategy, and then more so in the implementation plan as well.
Well, that sounds good. So now I know when I do the QR code wrong, it's not me, it's a broken link. So I'm going to hang on to that. The other thing I'll just mention that somebody just mentioned to me today is Google Translate. Now, that's not strictly part of this, but it is a fantastic thing for people to use when language might be an issue. So thanks very much.
All right, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you very much. An outstanding report, actually long overdue. And I'm glad to see it, but I don't think $50,000 is enough money on it. To be following up on the Highway to Heaven, for example, I think we've undersold that. Other than the video that was made for it, I'd like to see an arch at the beginning of the Highway to Heaven, another arch at the other, just like we have the Fisherman's Arch down in Steveston. I think that was what, a couple $100,000, but if we're going to mention it, those are the kinds of things, if we want to emphasize one community, We need to emphasize one community, and if that is the figurehead of the one community, I suggest that we look to that. Hopefully it will come from that when you do your discussion. It was interesting who you consulted and what you came up with in the directional signs, visual landmarks. I hope the signage isn't just for the obvious, as I call. Richmond has a rich historical, cultural, industrial, and development community, okay? We got parks, and we mentioned parks, and kudos to park staff. We got 4 and River Road, a very unique park to go up on the dike and see the log booms, etc. Aberdeen, Cambie, King George. We mentioned parks, Mineral. Hey, what about the rest of Richmond? We don't mention East Richmond either in it. And I think there's a whole Richmond. The idea of the dikes itself, just to get up and look at the water and stand and watch the boats come in or whatever off the jetty or whatever, Sturgeon Banks. Walk, no. If it's not downtown Steveston, it doesn't exist. Well, wait a minute. There's a lot more radiating out from Steveston. I didn't see that kind of approach in here with the consultants, because unless they're Richmond consultants, they won't know what's going on. What about agritourism? Anybody say the Kerr Barn's gone now, but that was a landmark at one time. Is there a farm out there that they should go visit? Today, stand on Cambie and 6th Road and watch 7 men in the water up to their chest, pulling a drag, getting your cranberries for Thanksgiving. That's a tourist thing to me. If you've never seen it before, you should go out and see it. I saw it this morning, actually, again. All right? These are our people. So I throw that out. And same with the fishing and the public art that we're getting now and the things we get. It's interesting for those that have traveled around the world. You go into a community, and I'll just take Hawaii for the example. You can go get a little booklet, and you can find every quaint little piece of green grass in Honolulu that you could visit that may have orchids, may have hibiscus, may have whatever, just to visit, because it's part of the whole thing in their tourism thing. And I think we got to think beyond the box. Great start, I'm with you 100%. And I think if we need more money, we should be looking at it, or at least a recommendation, because I don't think we've exploited ourselves enough in the tourist and destination. We've done the obvious, and other communities have done the same. I think we can do better than that. And I think we should, because we have what it takes. It's a beautiful community, and there's lots to it. Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Heat.
Yeah, maybe we should have some wayfinding to our homeless camps here in Richmond. You can call me out of order, but I'll withdraw that then. But I mentioned something earlier. It was probably late last year, and we talked about you recall I asked a question about beautification in entrance areas to Richmond, whether it's off the Oak Street Bridge, one of those bridges. And we were talking about, just mentioned to the mayor earlier that we had, flowers planted at the entrance areas. We had these nice signs and all that. And I know your response at that time was the wayfinding was in process and you'd be getting back to us. Are we expanding it a little bit beyond just the signs and stuff like that?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed. So a couple of opportunities. First of all, in terms of the expansion of wayfinding or what that looks like. So that can include signage, but also other wayfinding elements. So those don't all have to be signs. Other wayfinding methods can also be explored and implemented. In terms of the entrance signs specifically, so you may note that was also part of what we heard from the community. So that was raised in the What We Heard report. And there is a potential to bring that forward as a pilot project option, or as a part of an implementation plan as an option to move forward with the project around entrance signs to Richmond.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just to tag on a few more items here. Definitely in support of the guiding principles. I note in the staff's report, principle number 5, that's on our page 18, is the one about promote city and neighborhood character and identity. And I think in there, with that guiding principle, it will help to address one of the bigger main themes of the comments that we received. So on page GP 32, the first point there under main themes was entrances to the city, not knowing when you entered Richmond. And living out in Hamilton, it's very clear because there's no signs when you enter Richmond from New Westminster on the highway or on Westminster Highway Road, which isn't really a highway. And so, yeah, maybe staff can just confirm. This also follows up Councillor McNulty, who identified the lack of, in the consultant's report here, on the, when you look at the mapping experiences pages, there's one on City Centre, there's one on Steveston, and then there's a third one on the northern connections, nothing on the south or the east. So do you think the guiding principles are enough to get a signage in East Richmond?
Through your worship, to Councillor Wolfe. So in terms of the guiding principles, those are at the highest level to guide the overarching strategy. What will come next will be strategic recommendations. Those will be more specific than the guiding principles. And aligned with that will be some of the design elements and then potential pilot projects. So you'll see those latter elements in the next time we come back to you with the draft strategy. And at that time, if there are certain projects that we should explore more in terms of the pilots, then those will be explored further in the implementation plan with additional detail on costing and that sort of thing provided at that time. In terms of promoting both unifying the city, but also promoting the uniqueness of certain areas across the city. That is what is intended in that guiding principle 5. And certainly we'll look to make sure that the guiding principle is then evident in the draft strategy.
Great, I appreciate that. Just a few other comments. And yeah, I guess part of my experience as I used to be a guest service coordinator at the airport. I was a nature park house attendant. And whenever I travel around, I always stop at every visitor information center. So if you search right now for Richmond, where's the visitor information center near you? There is none in Richmond, right? We're not a small town. We don't have a one-way in. So it makes sense that we don't necessarily have one of those tourism Richmond sites per se, but which is why I value the guiding principles, which is to assist with digital technology, the fact that we got so many hotels, and when people want to step out the door and explore where they can go on foot or cab, it's nice to have a place they can go rather than have to go to one place first and then launch out to their location. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to how this works itself out. Thank you very much.
All right, may I have a motion? So moved. Moved and seconded. Anything further? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Brings us to the City Center District Energy Bylaw.
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Alan, anything to add to your report?
Your worship, I have nothing to add to the report.
Okay, Councillor Day.
So what a great report, how exciting. We're going to have 176 developments on this district energy utility and 5 permanent energy centers with a total of 28,000 residential units. Those numbers are just staggering. Is there anything that would slow us down, like if real estate market just dies for a period of time? Could we still plug along, or would we scale back to the developments that are coming down the pipe?
Your worship, to Councillor Day, all infrastructure planning is based on in-time implementation. So even though our long-term plan over these 30 years is the numbers that you just mentioned, we are regularly monitoring the development pace and the development permits and rezoning and building permits, and we time our infrastructure investment to the development. So we make sure that if there is any slowdown in development, we can slow down with implementation, service our customers, recover revenues that we invested up to that time, and when the development starts moving again, we speed up, so we can always time it.
Good planning, thank you.
Okay, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And we're now adjourned, and we'll, just give us a sec. We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried.
Very much, and thank you for the report. It's a lot of numbers to crunch. I see in the report that the permit fees for plan processing are going to go up 15%, but that's still below the break-even rate. What would it take to cover the costs of those plan processing?
Through the mayor, through to Councillor Day, I would like to pass that question off.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, short answer, too much. The 15% increase was meant for those building permits based upon a construction value between $1,000 and $300,000. There's two reasons that we initiated an increase. The first reason is cost recovery. For every time we send one inspector to a site, it costs the city $600. And so on some of these items, there are many iterative inspections that where all comes down in the wash. Our revenues in building approvals are good. So we're not in the business of making a profit. However, it is important that we move towards some form of cost recovery for the smaller value construction projects. And the other rationale for us doing this is to bring us into alignment with our sister municipalities, such as Burnaby and Surrey, which typically charge more. So our 15% raise would bring us a little bit higher than one and a little bit lower than the other, and for that range of construction value.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, Mayor Brody. So, okay, it costs that much to do an inspection. That's staggering. If you have a builder, developer that is doing it right, they should save money over the one who's not doing it right. So if you have to do over and over and over again inspections because, I don't know, maybe they think you might get tired and say, okay, fine, it's good enough. Shouldn't there be like almost a pay for play for developers who aren't getting it together?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, yes, there is in our building regulation bylaw. When it becomes excessive, we do have like a per diem or per time.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have I think, 4 questions. My first one, hearing what I just heard, I think it even validates it further. When I see on page 9 in the report where we're considering not increasing some things to the 2.4% increase, on page 9 I see under Schedule 10 soil deposit and removal that we would increase that soil deposit and removal by only 2 cents rather than the 25 cents. And the reason being is that it can be in the tens of thousands of meters. It can be. And I think I read this correctly, that the 13 items that are altered are because we've heard from groups. It says the request of the respective stakeholders. So I wonder who are the stakeholders that we heard of or heard from to land on this amount of an increase. And I'm asking also because I attend the monthly community safety meetings where we hear about new stop work orders every month, and it's due to illegal soil deposit and removal. And clearly to get stop work order lifted, we need to send crews in to inspect, maybe multiple times. So I'm seeing that activity in Richmond takes a lot of staff time and cost on the city, and now we're being asked to recoup much less. So could staff comment on that?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the stakeholders refer to the different departments where the rates are evaluated and where they've done their research to determine the rates. As far as the soil being increased only the 2 cents, if I can defer that to the manager of that area. Is
Is the manager here?
the manager?
No?
No, I
Okay,
apologize
well
for
then,
that.
Councillor Wolf can follow that up on the telephone with that manager. Who is
Okay.
the manager he should speak to?
Thank you.
Through your worship, the cost to do soil inspection is recovered through the staff salary. It's not any additional cost to conduct an inspection.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Okay, thanks for that. My next questions are not in that part of the report. They're in the what do they call it here? In the bylaw section that follows, so the many pages of the schedules to the bylaw. And I'm just wondering if this is the time right now where council could ask for some of these rates to be increased. For example, I'll just give one of them, and then Mayor, you could let me know if this is the right time to address some of these other ones. But on our page 27, fin 27, under the short-term boarding and lodging business license, the fee is $158. Our municipality to the north just up theirs to $1,000. Is this an appropriate time to ask for an amendment or a separate motion to increase our fee of short-term boarding and lodging business license?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, we understand there's been some recent increases in this area. Specifically, Vancouver has had a sizable increase. The city is roughly 15% lower than the current market analysis for 2023 in a peer group of cities above 100,000. Staff can revisit this, conduct a market analysis post-2024. The city's regulations regarding short-term rentals differ slightly from city to city. The city's restrictions are such that there are limitations in terms of boarding and lodging to a maximum of 2 people that can be operating in that type of license. I'm not familiar with similar restrictions like that in Vancouver.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue on then. It might be a different staff person to respond. On our page fin 29, under our demolition waste and recyclable material, we have a $295 application fee and then $3.50 per square foot of waste from structures get demolished. I know right now almost all of this is going to Eco Waste or Montrose. They don't have the MRF, the multi recycling building at all, and it's probably a decade away. Can we not include a separate fee or a lower rate if a demolishing company or an unbuilder, for example, takes it apart on site as opposed to smashing it all into bits, putting it in the back of a giant dump truck and taking it to be forgotten about in some pile somewhere else? So could we not add a second or more complex level to this?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, At this time, Director of Public Works is not present to comment on that. We'll have to get back to you via memo on that at this
All right,
point.
you can tell us before council. Councillor Wolf, is there anything more?
Yes, I appreciate that. Just one last one. On our page, Fin 55, this is about the tree protection. Basically the bottom of that page on the right, it says there's a security deposit for replacement trees planted as compensation for a significant tree, and the amount is 20,000 and change. And tomorrow, for example, at planning, we're going to be hearing about a developer who did in fact do this, damaged and removed a significant tree. So could staff just clarify, is that amount am I reading it correctly that 20,000 is a security deposit for the new trees, not the fine, or like there's other levels of financial impact? Because like tomorrow's report, we don't see. All we see is that the developer wants to offer us 4 trees in replacement for the illegally cutting a significant tree down.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the security deposit is to ensure the survival of the tree that was planted, the replacement tree. And so
if there's 4 replacement trees for that one, then there's 4 times that amount?
That entire amount would be to secure the survival of those 4 trees. So it would mean that in addition to best practices to keep those trees alive through irrigation and proper care, should any one of those or all of those trees not make it through the first year, those securities will be used to replant again.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Well, thanks for the report. First of all, I was actually quite happy to read through it and see a lot of the fees not being increased, or not being increased significantly, because I think people in business and throughout the community are just getting hit left, right, and center with fee increases, whether it's interest rates and things that have nothing to do with the city. But I was happy to hear that. Although, as Councillor Wolf has pointed out, I tend to agree with him on the $158 fee for a short-term board, and I think staff can look at that as we go on. And just a couple other curiosities as I read through it. For instance, for a patio for a restaurant, that fee is $300, and not going up, which is great, but virtually twice as much as for a short-term boarding situation. So maybe that's something we can look at, because restaurants are having a very hard time. And in addition to the fee they have to pay, they also have to pay for the upkeep and maintaining that patio, and it's quite expensive. And I don't think too many of the outdoor patios remain from the number we had at the height of the pandemic. Stand to be corrected, but I think we've lost a few. And the other question I have, or just comment, I suppose, is on page 9, when it's the $100 parking fee to do with the Alta Court situation and down there. If I'm reading that correctly, to me, $100 to park in that area with a permit is a little bit on the steep side. I'm under the impression from talking to people from other cities and other jurisdictions that sometimes parking permits are in the $35 to $45 to $55 range. And again, I could be wrong on that, but just a comment, $100 for a parking permit on the street there, I take it, is I think a little on the high side.
Through Mayor Brody to Councillor Hobbs, I will have the director answer.
To your worship, to Councillor Hobbs, yeah, Alta Court is the trial that we're doing out by Azure Road that we brought to you a little while ago, and we're moving forward with that. The $100 was kind of around average what we found in the region surrounding us. So, and it's what we brought to council as the price for that parking. If council directs us to change that, certainly we can. But we did find that was pretty average.
Okay, thanks for that.
Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question about the section on animal control regulations. On Fin 12, it says that a dangerous dog offense in its first time is $662, and then in the second time it's $1,314, and the third time it's the same, whereas everything else went up. doubled on the third time. I was just wondering why it didn't go up for the third offense.
I will have someone address your answer, sorry.
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, it makes sense that there would be an escalating fee, so we can take a look at that. Beyond that point, there are more drastic measures that can be sought, such as the destruction order for the animal. But it does make sense that there would be an increase.
Yeah, thanks for that, because there's the asterisk, the note that anytime there could be an order for the dog to be destroyed. But I just suspect that that might be a typo, that the third time around it didn't go up because the other two did. So unless there's some sort of community charter statute that you can only charge so much, I would suspect that that would go up, and I would hope that it would. Because, you know, it seems that more and more people have dogs, and we seem to be having more and more incidences. So it would be good to make sure that people knew that it was important.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, Green. I just wanted to make an amendment to the Alder Court parking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the people who had all the hospital employees parking in their cul-de-sac. And it doesn't seem really fair that we're charging them $100 to park in front of their own place. Am I getting this wrong?
I will have someone come and answer that for you.
Alta Court.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, this is the trial parking restriction. At the end of the day, in general, when municipalities do restrict parking or create parking restrictions around owners only in front, they do charge a permit fee for that. So this is something that we took to the public all around that area as your road, and as you all recall. And Alta Court was the only one, the only area in that whole quarter section that chose to move forward with this restriction. They, knowing that it would be $100 per vehicle that parks on the street.
Why don't you give us a memo with the information that you found when you did some research to find out where other places were charging?
Yeah, absolutely, Your Worship, we can do that.
Just so it was, is it voluntary, or everybody in the court has to, okay, everybody or nobody, to pay the $100 each?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, anyone that wants to, every vehicle that's parked on that street has to pay $100 for the year. It's for a whole year.
Each, so if you have 3 vehicles, you'd be paying $300.
That is correct.
Okay, well, let's get a memo on that, because I'm a little queasy about it, only because it, I mean, if you guys said to me, well, you've got to pay to park in front of your own house, I'd be a little miffed about that. So I'm a little, I understand it's a pilot project, it's only for 1 year, and I can certainly understand why they'd be forced to pay it, because if they don't, it could end up, you know, with all the hospital employees parking in front of their house. So okay, well, let's get the memo, we'll talk about it more at council. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is
Opposed.
carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Permissive property tax exemptions.
Recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions on that? Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. So am I understanding this correctly, that FIN 89 starts a list of groups that are not qualifying? Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, FIN 89, Schedule C onwards, all properties contained in Schedule A to, I believe, G, or H, sorry, I, my apologies, are all permissively exempted.
Okay. And then everybody after that just doesn't meet the qualifications.
Correct.
Yeah, I found it a little unusual, because you've got, if we go back to, like, you know, FIN, let's say, pick a number 79, the International Buddhist Society, you know, they're getting 16, like, they've broken it down, so the portion of taxable is 63.5%, And then I think proportion of improvement taxable is 16.8%. So it sounds like you've actually measured the square footage of the area that is used for religious purposes or for a charity, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Day. Yeah, so Schedule B is the section where the permissive exemption is allowed for places of worship outside of the actual physical place of worship, where it would be, where it is deemed necessary for the place of worship, such as the playground for the kids in a school or parking for the patrons to go to worship and things like that. So there are sections allowed, and as well as portions of the property that would not be exempted.
Okay, so have we explained this in detail to the Richmond Emmanuel Church, the Petaskotfield Church, and all the other ones that come after that they could qualify if they, I don't know, clarified their use of the property?
Sorry, my apologies, through your worship to Councillor Day. Sections A to I are all permissively exempted. We are seeking council approval to have these properties exempted or permissively exempted. There are, however, portion of the property that did not meet the requirement to have permissive exemption. Therefore, the proportionate usage are indicated on the schedule. We use this schedule to provide to BC Assessment, and they determine, okay, this is the portion that is permissive exemption, and these are the portion that are not permissively exempted, and they provide that permissive exemption amount to the city.
This is well over grade 10 math then. I'm wondering if we don't need to just provide the other groups with the general information in a way that they can understand it.
Certainly, we can do that through your worship.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And the amendments to the consolidated 5-year financial plan. Moved and seconded. Anything to add to your report, Mike?
Nothing.
Melissa?
Nothing to add, your worship. I just want to highlight that section 1 of the report are items that previously approved by council, and items to section 2 to 4 of the report. Our majority are grants received throughout the year that need to be included in the 5-year financial plan in accordance with the community charter.
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We are now adjourned, and that's that.